Today we will delve into the most mysterious and enigmatic figures described in the Bible. These beings and phenomena not only intrigue but also evoke fear, wonder, and awe. What lies behind the mysterious elders, powerful creatures, and angels found within the sacred texts? We will discuss their role in the biblical context, uncover ancient secrets, and share a few eerie stories that will make you think twice. Prepare to immerse yourself in a world full of mysticism and divine presence. Let's start with one of the most unusual images surrounding the throne of God: the 24 elders, mentioned in the book of Revelation, who sit on their thrones around God's throne. They are dressed in white robes, and golden crowns shine on their heads. These are not merely symbolic figures, but important representatives of the Church, who rule alongside Christ and participate in the worship of God. An interesting fact: there is a theory that these 24 elders represent two key aspects of believers. 12 elders symbolize the 12 tribes of Israel, and the other 12, the 12 apostles of Jesus Christ. This unites the Old and New Testament saints, making them symbols of all humanity faithful to God. But don't think of them as mere observers. In some interpretations, these elders actively participate in judgment and governance. Their task is to ensure the fulfillment of God's will on earth. This means that every believer striving for righteousness may one day attain the great honor of sitting beside God and ruling with Him. Now let's move on to one of the most puzzling and complex visions recorded in the Bible: the wheels in Ezekiel's vision. The prophet Ezekiel saw strange beings, living creatures with the faces of a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. But the strangest thing was that they were accompanied by enormous wheels, covered in eyes, that could move in any direction without turning. What does this mean? Many scholars agree that these wheels symbolize God's divine power and omniscience. The eyes on the wheels indicate that God sees everything. He observes every action, every word, every intention. The ability to move in any direction without turning symbolizes God's unrestricted presence in any place and at any time. There is an interesting hypothesis connected to this vision. Some suggest that Ezekiel might have been describing what many now call UFOs. This vision is so unusual and incomprehensible that some interpret it as ancient evidence of contact with extraterrestrial beings. Of course, this is just a theory, but it adds even more mystery to this already complex image. The next creature we will discuss is Behemoth. The description of Behemoth appears in the book of Job, and this creature is astounding in its size and strength. The Bible says that Behemoth is one of the mightiest creations of God. His power is so great that no one can defeat him. He eats grass like an ox, but his muscles and bones are so strong that he seems invincible. Interestingly, many scholars have tried to unravel who Behemoth actually was. Some claim it was a hippopotamus, while others say it was an elephant. However, the description of Behemoth goes beyond known animals. For example, the Bible states that Behemoth's tail moves like a cedar. No modern animal has such a tail. This has led to theories that Behemoth could have been one of the prehistoric creatures, perhaps a dinosaur. The mystery of Behemoth is deepened by apocalyptic texts that speak of his future role in the end times. He, along with Leviathan, will take part in an epic battle. These two creatures will clash in a deadly fight, symbolizing the struggle between the forces of nature and chaos. Now let's move on to another colossal creature: Leviathan. This figure is mentioned not only in the book of Job, but also in other biblical texts. Leviathan is a massive sea monster, endowed with incredible strength and fury. In Job, it is said that his body is covered with tough scales, and no weapon can harm him. His breath is so hot that it can ignite everything around him. Leviathan is the embodiment of chaos and destruction. In ancient Hebrew mythology, he was often depicted as a dragon or a giant serpent living in the depths of the sea. However, his role in the Bible is not merely that of a monster. Leviathan is a symbol that even the mightiest forces of chaos are subject to God's power. But that's not all. In Jewish myths, it is said that at the end of times God will kill Leviathan and make a feast for the righteous from his flesh. This feast will symbolize the ultimate victory over chaos and evil. Here's a creepy story. In the 19th century, a giant creature's corpse was discovered on the coast of Scotland, and no one could identify it. Locals claimed it was Leviathan, having survived for millennia beneath the water. To this day, strange lights are occasionally seen over the waters in those places. Could these be signals from the ocean depths or traces of unknown creatures? Let's now talk about cherubim, angelic beings that play an important role in guarding God's presence. Cherubim are first mentioned in the book of Genesis, where God placed them at the entrance to the Garden of Eden with a flaming sword to guard the way to the tree of life after the fall of man. Cherubim are also depicted on the cover of the Ark of the Covenant, highlighting their importance as guardians of holiness. But what makes the cherubim so intriguing? In the book of Ezekiel, the cherubim are described as beings with 4 faces, that of a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. This symbolizes various aspects of God's power and authority. The face of a man represents intelligence and reason, the lion, strength, the ox, patience and endurance, and the eagle, spiritual exaltation. In ancient cultures such as Babylonian and Assyrian, similar depictions of creatures with animal and human faces existed. This suggests that the cherubim may have been perceived as figures from ancient cultures, later reinterpreted in biblical texts. Now let's discuss seraphim, angelic beings who, unlike the cherubim, are always near God's throne. Their main task is to glorify the Lord and repeat, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord." These angels are in eternal worship, constantly surrounding His throne. But they have another important role. They participate in the spiritual purification of people. Seraphim are described as having 6 wings. With 2 they cover their faces, with 2 their feet, and with 2 they fly. This detail emphasizes their reverence before God. In the book of Isaiah, one of the seraphim touched Isaiah's lips with a burning coal to cleanse him and prepare him for prophetic service. An interesting fact, seraphim are considered the closest angels to God and are associated with fire. Their name comes from the Hebrew word saraph, meaning burning or fiery. They literally burn with divine energy and symbolize purification and holiness. Now let's move on to one of the most mysterious figures in the Bible, Melchizedek. And this enigmatic king and priest appears in the book of Genesis, where he blesses Abraham. Melchizedek was the king of Salem and priest of the Most High God, but little else is said about him in the Bible. His name translates as King of Righteousness, highlighting his significant spiritual role. What's interesting is that Melchizedek had neither a beginning of days nor an end of life, making him a unique figure. In the Epistle to the Hebrews, the Apostle Paul states that Jesus Christ is a priest after the order of Melchizedek, meaning his priesthood is eternal, just like Melchizedek's. But there's a mysterious detail. Many believe that Melchizedek might not have been just a man, but a divine figure, or even an angel. Some theologians argue that he might have been a pre-incarnation appearance of Christ himself. This makes him one of the most mysterious figures in the Bible. Now let's turn to a figure that truly inspires fear, the angel of death. This angel appears in the Bible in the story of the Exodus, when God sent the angel of death to strike down all the firstborns of the Egyptians. This event was the culmination of the 10 plagues and demonstrated the power of God's judgment. But this is not the only mention of the angel of death. The Old Testament speaks of many instances where angels sent by God carried out His will and brought punishment. For example, in the book of Kings, the angel of death destroyed 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in one night, showing his terrifying power. In many cultures, the angel of death is depicted as a grim figure with a scythe, coming for souls. In the Bible, he represents something greater. He is an instrument of God's judgment, appearing when sinners must be punished. And finally, let's talk about the most famous fallen figure, Lucifer. Lucifer, whose name means light-bearer, was one of the highest angels but fell because of his pride. He desired to take God's place and led a rebellion in heaven. This led to his fall and transformation into Satan, the chief adversary of God and mankind. An interesting fact: in some texts, Lucifer was so beautiful and powerful that other angels envied him. But his pride and lust for power led to catastrophe. His story is a lesson in the dangers of seeking power and defying divine will. Here's a creepy story. In an old monastery in Italy, there is a mysterious book, the Codex Gigas, also known as the Devil's Bible. Legend has it that the monk who created this book sold his soul to Lucifer to write it in one night. One of the pages shows the face of the devil, and it is said that those who gaze at this page for too long begin to experience strange visions. These are the mysterious and powerful beings mentioned in the Bible. Each one carries deep symbolism and reminds us that the spiritual world is far more complex and enigmatic than we can imagine.